This is a brief tutorial on how to create MIDI clips to control worship lyric slides in ProPresenter. The way that this works is that the worship band has a laptop computer on stage that plays the click track out of Ableton Live. At the same time, MIDI notes are played in sync with the click track and sent over the network to the ProPresenter computer in the tech booth. ProPresenter translates the MIDI notes into instructions to select and advance slides. In order to program the MIDI cues, we need to have three things. First, we need the prepared worship slides in ProPresenter. Second, we need the audio for the click track. And finally, we need a connection between the tracks computer and ProPresenter, which we accomplish using network MIDI. Before we get to the actual programming, I just want to discuss what the MIDI notes do. We actually only use 3 MIDI notes to do our lyric slides automation. F#-1 selects the song in the ProPresenter playlist. G-1 selects a specific slide in the presentation, so for example, slide number 1 or slide number 10. Finally, C-1 tells ProPresenter just simply to go to the next slide, no matter what slide it's on. By using just these 3 notes, we have really precise control over what's displayed on screen. Once we prepare the MIDI cues for a song, it's really simple to reuse them as long as the slides don't change. The only thing that you need to do is edit the very first cue, which tells ProPresenter the position of the song in the weekend playlist. So for example, if it's the first song one week and the third song in another week, you'll need to edit this first cue to make sure ProPresenter knows where it lands in the sequence. What we do when we program the MIDI clip is just listen to the track and play along the cues in real time with the track, telling ProPresenter to go to the next slide whenever it's appropriate. We can do this in any digital audio workstation, but since we'll be playing the tracks out of Ableton Live, I'll use that for our example. Okay, let's go ahead and try programming a song. On my ProPresenter computer, I have a song that is already mapped out with the lyrics. I'm going to point out something here in the beginning of this song. Most of our song lyrics have 2 blank slides in the beginning. The reason for that is that we sometimes want things to happen in sync with the music. So the first slide starts playing when the click track begins, and then the second slide, we try to time it so that it comes up when the music actually begins. The click track actually starts before the people in the congregation can hear any of the music. So for example, if you want the lights to come up when the music starts, then you would do that over here on the second slide. Over on my Ableton Live computer, I have the click track here, which I've placed in track 1 in green, and then I have a blank MIDI track here for recording the cues. And on my third track, I actually have the full song. This is the song with a vocalist singing and not the click track. Often this is the original recording or an edit of the original recording. My ProPresenter computer and my Ableton Live computer are connected using network MIDI. Connecting the two using network MIDI is beyond the scope of this video, but there are lots of resources online which will be available in the production documentation. To program the song, I select the first slide in ProPresenter, and then over on my Ableton Live computer, I'm going to record arm the MIDI track. Now, in order to input the MIDI cues, you can use the keyboard, but it's a little bit complicated to set up. So instead, I'm going to use this little external MIDI controller, which already has the notes that I need encoded into it. This little controller is inside the laptop case for the production laptop. With the MIDI track enabled, I'm basically just going to play through the whole song and listen to it or sing along to it and advance the slides whenever I need to with the MIDI controller.
Intro 2, 3, 4. Verse 1.
I am weary from the waves crashing over every day. God of mercy, please come rescue me.
Verse 2. Drums in.
I am longing for your voice, gentle whisper in the noise. Father,
I'll go ahead and fast forward through the rest of this because you get the idea, but I'll take a moment to talk about the timing of the MIDI cues. Typically, we want the lyrics to come on screen before the congregation has to sing the words. If the worship song we're singing has kind of a fast tempo, this may mean that we're switching to the next slide before the current slide is over, perhaps on the last word or the second to last word, and that's totally okay. It's more important that we switch to the next slide and allow people to register the words before they have to sing it. What I've just done is I've gone through and programmed all the automation for the song just by playing it through and hitting the next slide button for the entire song. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go back to the beginning of the song and do a little bit of housekeeping by adding some specific cues that tell ProPresenter where to go for specific slides. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to zoom in, and right at the beginning, I'm going to draw an F-sharp -1. As you'll recall, F-sharp -1 tells ProPresenter which item to select in the playlist. Right after that, I'm going to draw a G-1. And the G-1 tells ProPresenter to select a specific slide. So zooming in, I'm going to edit the velocity for the F-sharp -1 first. So in my playlist, the song Breakthrough is going to be number 10. So I'll change the velocity of the F-sharp -1 to 10. And the G-1 is going to tell ProPresenter which slide to select, and in this case, it's going to be the first slide. So I'm going to change the velocity to 1. So by doing this, I'm saying, okay, ProPresenter, when this clip launches, first select item number 10 from your playlist, and then go to slide number 1. This ensures that I'm starting at the right place with all of the go to next slide cues. And you'll see that if I go to a different slide, when I launch the MIDI clip,
Intro 2, 3,
ProPresenter takes
4.
me back to the beginning because of what I've just encoded. So now I've used all three of the MIDI notes that I'm going to use to program the song. The F-sharp -1 to select the item in the ProPresenter playlist, the G-1 to tell ProPresenter which slide to go to, and the C-1 to tell ProPresenter to go to the next slide. So over here in Ableton Live, I like to click this fold button, which now just shows me the only three notes that I need. The next thing I'm going to do is program what I like to call mile marker cues. And these are cues that tell ProPresenter at specific points in the song which specific slide it should land on. So for example, I know that this cue here is for when the first verse starts. Even though I programmed it by going through the whole song and hitting next slide, I now want to switch this to a specific slide so that at key points in the song, ProPresenter knows exactly which slide it should land on. This is useful because sometimes the ProPresenter operator will make a mistake and do something with the keyboard or the mouse while the song is being automated. And if that happens, the MIDI cues could lose its place in the song. And if you only have cues that say go to the next slide, there's no way for the MIDI clip to know that it's not in the right place. So if we add a few of these mile markers, you know that it'll automatically correct itself if there's a problem. This also ensures that the lighting changes will happen at the right time. So I'm going to select this cue, which I know is the beginning of the first verse. I'm going to drag it up to G-1, which is the note that tells ProPresenter to select a specific slide. And because verse 1 starts on slide number 3, I'm going to change the velocity to 3. And if I go to a different slide and play it back from here,
Verse 1.
you'll see that it corrects itself. I'm going to do this for a number of the other slides as well, primarily the major breaks in the song from verse to chorus, chorus to bridge, etc. So now that I've added these mile markers, the next step is that I'll go through and make minor adjustments to the timing of these cues. So I know, for example, that I've made some mistakes over here at the end. So I'm going to play it back from there and try to fix them. So I see that this slide is late, so I'm going to try and slide the MIDI cue back in the timeline so that it lands at the right time. So I've gone through and I fixed that ending section there. And I could probably even work on it a little more. And it just requires a little bit of tweaking in terms of making the timing correct. And keep in mind that the timing of the slides will depend a lot on the speed of the song, the tempo of the song, and also the type of transition that's used in the lyric slides. So for example, if the transition is a really long dissolve, you'll need to transition earlier depending on the tempo of the song. So that's basically how it's done. What I would do is go through the song several times and adjust the timing of all the cues so that the lyrics come up at the right time. Finally, you'll play it through and make sure that everything is accurate, all the lyrics are correct, and you will go ahead and export this MIDI clip to send to the worship pastor. So I'll go through the process of doing that. You select the MIDI clip and you go to File, Export MIDI clip. And then I'll go ahead and save this on my desktop, and I'll say this is called Breakthrough MIDI cues. And then you're done. So as you can see, it's a pretty simple process to create these MIDI clips. It's just a very detailed process, and it takes time to get all of the timing correct. But it's not rocket science, and it's not difficult to do. It just takes a little bit of practice and patience. Thanks for watching.